Hello everyone. In this episode we will focus on Docker Compose and go through the steps recommended in Docker Docs. Docker Compose will allow us to create a composition of files that will permit us to run an application. In this example we will create 4 different files. The first one is our app in itself. In this case it's a simple Python project that will create a counter for the amount of hits a page receives. Our second file will have all the requirements in a file called requirements.txt that will be later called on in Dockerfile, which is the other file that we need to create. So we will need to create our Docker file with some conditional arguments. And lastly, we'll create a Docker Compose file which has an extension called YML. So let's start with our Python file. We need to create all our files in the same directory, so I've created a directory called test and have already inserted our files here. So as we can see, first we need to import time, Redis and Flask, right? Time, Redis and Flask. So Flask we'll be using to implement our web server. Redis will allow us to cache and save our data structure, and time will give us the option to create a timer. Okay, so here we can see this is the function that will give us the hit counter. We have created some retries so that when there is a problem in the connection or a connection error, it will continue to retry with this timer so that it will try and search for a connection again. Okay, so if the server is not yet running or if you have a temporary connection that is down, it will have few tries to make the hit count again. And this is our main application. So this will give us the message to our web page, and we will have the amount of times that it has been hit or it has been viewed right here. Okay, so it's quite simple. The next file will be the requirements. It will be the simplest file of them all. So as you can see here, requirements.txt. It will just call on Redis and Flask. This will be called upon by our Docker file. So let's check our Docker file, which is our third file. So Docker file. Docker files do not have an extension, so you need to remember that. Okay. So here we can see it will call on Python with the Alpine version. The maintainer, it's just our name, and usually there is an email here as well associated so that other devs will know who to contact if they have some problems. So this is our work directory. In this case it's code. And then we need to set the environment variables used by Flask. So in this case we have 2, and we'll run it on the DNS 000, something really simple. After, we need to install the dependencies. In this case it's GCC, dev and Linux headers. Okay. After, we will go to the requirements text that we wrote before and just copy the requirements and install its dependencies here. So we will just install the dependencies. Here expose, it's the port that we will be using. So we'll open our web page in localhost and then give it the port 5000. And here we have the current directory in the project. So we'll just copy the current directory in the project to the work directory in the image. And finally we set the default commands. So it's just Flask and run. Quite easy, right? Okay. So now for our last file, it's the Docker Compose. So Docker Compose.yml. Here it's quite simple as well. So we'll tell it the version, it's 3. So to build it on the current directory, right? We tell them the ports and Redis Alpine. So quite simple as well. There is nothing to go wrong here, okay? So now that we have set up all our files, all we need to do is give it the command to run. So we will say Docker Compose and up. And now it will take some time to install all the dependencies and run all the commands that we have given it. So it will run past all the 4 files that we created with just one small step. We will have to wait a little bit for it to install all the parts. Okay, and we see here that it is running on the DNS we have given and on the port 5000. So now let's go to our web browser and type localhost and then the port 5000. Okay, hello world, I have been seen one time, and if we refresh it will go up. So it's working perfectly, right? The magic is done. Now, if you want to change your application in app.py without having to build your image again, it is possible. But first let's try and change it. Okay, so let's Control C for it to stop. And we will try and change the app.py. Okay, let's change let's change it to insert hello world, hello beautiful world. Okay, beautiful world, I have been seeing wonderful times. Now let's save it. Let's run it again. Okay, it's running. So nothing has happened, right? Okay, so what we need to do? Let's cancel it again. We need to do a simple thing. We need to change the composer file, and then we can code it, and it will give us all the changes without having to mount it all up again to build it all again. So let's go to the composer file. Now we need to add here the volume. So volumes. Oops, I forgot to insert volumes. And then say, where is the directory? So it's in code, if you remember our work directory, right? And then we need to tell it also the environment. So in this case, our environment is in Flask, right? So it's Flask, and let's call it development. Okay, and now we are done. So let's see, we have saved our file again, right? We can even change it, so we'll see. Hello, beautiful, beautiful world of ours. Okay, let's save it. And now let's run it again. Okay, it's running. And here you see, hello beautiful world of ours. I have been viewed, and it continues. As you see, it hasn't reset, so you can now code it as many times as you want. So let's do it like this. Let's open it. Okay, here let's call it city of ours, or city. And voila, you can live code it, and the changes will happen without you don't have it even to disconnect from the server or anything. You can just live code it and everything will happen. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and have a wonderful day.